There are fortresses built by evil. And then there are fortresses stolen from good. In the year 3002 of the Third Age, the Tower of the Moon fell silent. Its marble walls still stood, its tower still revolved, but the light that poured from it was no longer moonlight. It was corpse light, a light that illuminated nothing. This is the story of Minas Morgul, and what happens when evil can't create, but only corrupt. In the year 3320 of the Second Age, Isildur, son of Elendil, built a fortress in the Mountains of Shadow. He called it Minas Ithil, the Tower of the Rising Moon. Picture this city in its glory, white marble walls catching the moonlight, causing the entire fortress to shimmer with silvery radiance. On nights when the moon was full, travelers reported that the city glowed as if crafted from moonlight itself. At the tower's summit, the topmost course revolved slowly, a sentinel's eye keeping eternal watch over Mordor's borders. This was no ordinary fortress. In Isildur's courtyard, a sapling of the White Tree took root, a seedling he had rescued from drowned Númenor, the last living connection to the ancient world that had fallen beneath the waves. In the tower's highest chamber sat the Ithil stone, one of the 7 seeing stones brought from the undying lands, allowing the lords of Gondor to see across vast distances and communicate with allies. The choice of the moon as the city's symbol was deeply intentional. In Tolkien's mythology, the moon itself is the last silver flower of Telperion, one of the 2 trees of Valinor. When the trees were destroyed, their final fruit and flower were set in the heavens as sun and moon, divine luminaries to combat the eternal dark. The moon represented vigilance, beauty, and sacred radiance descended from paradise itself. And Minas Ithil was one of twin fortresses. Across the great river Anduin, Isildur's brother Anarion founded Minas Ithil, the Tower of the Sun. Moon and sun, east and west. 2 brothers, 2 cities, 1 kingdom. Together with the capital city of Osgiliath between them, these 3 jewels formed the heart of Gondor's defense against the shadow of Mordor. For more than a century, Minas Ithil stood radiant in its valley, moonlight welling through its marble walls, the White Tree flourishing in its courts. But nothing beautiful lasts forever in Middle-earth. The first time Minas Ithil fell, it fell in fire. In the year 3429 of the Second Age, Sauron launched a devastating surprise attack against the Númenorian exiles. His armies poured from Mordor and overwhelmed the city. The White Tree burned. Isildur barely escaped with his family and 1 precious seedling. But that first fall was temporary. After the War of the Last Alliance defeated Sauron, Gondor reclaimed the city. The White Tree was replanted, the Watch resumed. For more than 3,000 years of the Third Age, the Tower of the Moon stood sentinel once more. Yet time has a way of wearing down even the strongest defenses. In the year 1636 of the Third Age, plague swept across Middle-earth. The Great Plague, they called it, and it devastated Gondor's population. King Telemnar and all his children perished, cities emptied, the army withered. And Minas Ithil? The chronicles are stark. Minas Ithil was emptied of its population. The fortresses that guarded the passes to Mordor were unmanned, and the watch on the borders of Mordor ceased due to a lack of troops. Think about what that means. For 344 years, longer than the entire history of the United States, the eastern watchtower of Gondor stood undermanned or abandoned. The passes to Mordor, which should have been garrisoned and guarded, lay open. The sentinel's eye had closed. This is not a story of glorious defeat in battle. This is a story of demographic collapse and institutional failure. The slow erosion of vigilance. The watch that failed not through cowardice, but through simple exhaustion. And in the year 1980 of the Third Age, evil returned to Mordor unopposed. The Witch King of Angmar, Lord of the Nazgûl, defeated in the north by Gondor and its allies, came south through those unguarded passes and gathered his fellow ringwraiths in the shadows of Mordor. 20 years later, they came for Minas Ithil. The siege began in the year 3000 of the Third Age. Forces led by the 9 ringwraiths surrounded the city. Men who had been enslaved by Sauron in ages past poured through the pass of Cirith Ungol by night, investing the white walls with shadow. The defenders of Minas Ithil held for 2 years. Let that sink in. Even weakened, even undermanned, the fortress Isildur built resisted the Nazgûl for 2 full years. The walls he raised did not crumble easily, but numbers and terror prevailed over stone and steel. In the year 3002, Minas Ithil fell. And then something strange happened. The Nazgûl did not destroy the city. They did not pull down its walls or topple its towers. Instead, they renamed it. Minas Ithil became Minas Morgul, the Tower of Sorcery. The moon gave way to dark magic, and the transformation that followed was unlike anything else in the history of Middle-earth. What exactly did the Nazgûl do during and after that siege? The texts don't tell us the details. We don't know if Sauron himself came to perform rituals of desecration. We don't know how long the transformation took, but we can see the results. The white marble walls remained white, but their gleam became sickly, corpse-like. The tower still revolved, but now it moved like a great leering head. The gate, once welcoming, became a cavernous mouth with gleaming teeth and eyes. At both ends of the white stone bridge leading to the city stood hideous statues of twisted men and animals. Where gardens had once bloomed, now grew fields of pale white flowers with grotesque shapes, luminous, beautiful in their own horrifying way, but reeking of decay, and exhaling poisonous vapors that polluted the river flowing from the vale. The site where the white tree once grew, Gondor's most sacred symbol, now lay in the possession of beings who were themselves perversions of life. And the emblem on the banners changed. Where once a silver moon had shone, now flew a disfigured moon in a horrible effigy of death. The Witch King had made the Tower of the Moon his own, and in doing so, he had created the most complete architectural embodiment of evil's true nature. Listen to these words, spoken by Frodo Baggins in the Tower of Cirith Ungol. The shadow that bred them can only mock, it cannot make. Not real, new things of its own. I don't think it gave life to the orcs. It only ruined and twisted them. This is the central principle of evil in Tolkien's legendarium. It comes directly from his Christian theology and permeates every aspect of his mythology. In the Silmarillion, we're told that Melkor, the first Dark Lord, could create naught that had life of its own. In Tolkien's late writings collected in The Nature of Middle-earth, he states it explicitly. The things made or designed by Melkor were never new, but were imitations or mockeries of works of others. Evil, in Tolkien's vision, cannot create. It can only corrupt what good has made. It cannot build. It can only defile. It cannot bring forth life. It can only twist and pervert existing life into mockeries of what it should be. And Minas Morgul is this principle made manifest in stone and sorcery. Sauron could not build a fortress to rival Minas Ithil, so he took Minas Ithil and made it his own through inversion. The Nazgûl could not create a seat of power, so they infected an existing seat with their undead essence and transformed it into a monument to their nature. Every feature of Minas Morgul reveals this parasitic relationship with its origin. The architecture remains, those white marble walls still stand, but the meaning has been inverted. The tower still revolves, but its purpose has shifted from vigilance to menace. The glow still emanates from the city, but it's no longer the luminescence of the moon. The Witch King didn't need to destroy Minas Ithil and build something new. That would be creation, and creation is beyond evil's power. Instead, he performed something far more insidious, a systematic desecration that left the original form intact while evacuating it of all sanctity. The most chilling aspect of Minas Morgul is that you can still see what it was. The beauty that once dwelt there is still visible in the bones of the architecture, and that makes the violation all the more horrifying. When Frodo, Sam, and Gollum approach the Morgul Vale, Tolkien gives us one of the most haunting passages in all of the Lord of the Rings. All was dark about it, earth and sky, but it was lit with light. Not the imprisoned moonlight welling through the marble walls of Minas Ithil long ago, tower of the moon, fair and radiant in the hollow of the hills. Paler indeed than the moon ailing in some slow eclipse was the light of it now, wavering and blowing like a noisome exhalation of decay, a corpse light, a light that illuminated nothing. Read that passage carefully. It's doing something profound. First, Tolkien tells us there is light. The city still glows. But then he immediately contrasts this with what it used to be. The imprisoned moonlight welling through the marble walls. Notice that word, welling. Like a spring, like something alive and flowing naturally from its source. The moonlight used to pour through the walls as if the marble itself was translucent, channeling divine radiance into the valley below. Now the illumination is wavering and blowing like a noisome exhalation of decay. This isn't just dim or shadowy, this is dead light, radiance that has been killed but animated nonetheless, corpse light. And Tolkien adds the most disturbing detail. It illuminated nothing. Think about what that means. True light reveals, it shows truth, it makes vision possible. But this false glow does the opposite. It creates a luminescence that blinds rather than reveals, that obscures rather than illuminates. It retains the appearance while being fundamentally opposed to its essential nature. The moon itself is described as ailing in some slow eclipse, as if the sacred symbol of Isildur's tower is dying, fading, being slowly consumed by shadow. And in the fields around the city grow those terrible flowers. The chroniclers describe them as luminous and beautiful, though their shapes were horrific. They glow with that same corpse light, exhaling vapors that poison the river and dizzy the mind. As the hobbits cross the bridge, the fumes nearly overcome Frodo. He begins running toward the city's gate, that mouth with its gleaming teeth, before Sam and Gollum drag him back. Even the vegetation has been inverted. What should bring beauty and life brings hallucination and death. This is the full picture of Minas Morgul's perversion. From the emblem of the disfigured moon on the standards, to the twisted statues on the bridge, to the poisonous flowers in the meads, to the corpse light emanating from marble walls, to the tower revolving like a skull surveying its domain. And perhaps most unsettling of all, where Minas Ithil had been bustling and alive like its sister city Minas Tirith, Minas Morgul is silent as the grave. The city lives, but it does not breathe. Minas Morgul was not merely a symbol. It was an active instrument of evil, a place where sorcery was practiced and torments inflicted. The Silmarillion calls it the City of Torment, and the stories of those who entered its gates confirm this description. In the year 2043 of the Third Age, King Eärnur of Gondor received a challenge from the Witch King. Eärnur had fought against the Witch King in the north and had humiliated him in battle. The Witch King had not forgotten. His first challenge was sent from Minas Morgul. "Come and face me in single combat, if you dare." The steward Mardil restrained his king from answering. 7 years later, the Witch King sent a second challenge. This time, Eärnur could not be restrained. He rode to Minas Morgul with a small company of knights. He crossed that white bridge. He entered that mouth-like gate. He was never seen again. The records tell us he was betrayed by the Nazgûl and taken alive into the City of Torment. The people of Gondor believed he died there in agony, subjected to torments we can only imagine. And with his disappearance, the line of kings ended. For nearly 1,000 years, until Aragorn's return, the stewards ruled in place of the lost kings. The Witch King had lured Gondor's rightful king into his fortress and destroyed him. It was personal, it was calculated, and it left Gondor wounded in a way no military defeat could match. But the Witch King's cruelty extended beyond Minas Morgul's walls. From his fortress, he struck at those who opposed Sauron throughout Middle-earth. His weapon? The Morgul-blade. When the Witch King stabbed Frodo at Weathertop, a shard of the blade broke off in his shoulder and began working toward his heart. If it had reached its destination, Frodo would have become a lesser wraith, enslaved to the Nine. Even after Elrond removed the shard and healed the physical wound, the spiritual injury remained. Every year on the anniversary of the stabbing, Frodo suffered pain and darkness. The Morgul-blade does to people what Minas Morgul did to Minas Ithil. It doesn't destroy, it transforms. It takes what is good and living and slowly perverts it into a shadow of itself, neither dead nor truly alive. The very name Morgul comes from the Sindarin words for dark sorcery or black magic. And on March 10th, 3019 of the Third Age, Middle-earth witnessed the full, terrible power of Minas Morgul unleashed. A red signal flashed from Mordor. Minas Morgul answered with a livid flash of blue flame shooting upward from its tower. A terrible cry rent the air. The mouth-like gates opened. And out came the Morgul host. Frodo, Sam, and Gollum, hiding in the valley, watched in horror as the army emerged. Rank upon rank of soldiers, orcs, trolls, and other creatures of shadow. At their head rode the Lord of the Nazgûl himself on a fell beast. For one terrible moment, the Witch King paused and turned his hooded head toward where Frodo crouched. Frodo's old wound ached. The Witch King seemed to sense something, some presence of the ring he hunted, but Frodo clutched the ring and it remained hidden. Then the host moved on, marching toward Minas Tirith for the great assault that would become the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. Minas Morgul had sent forth its lord and its armies, and in doing so, it had set in motion its own defeat. Here's what the Witch King knew. He was the mightiest of the 9 ringwraiths. He commanded armies. He wielded sorcery. He dwelt in a fortress of terror that drove men mad. No man could kill him. Ancient prophecy declared it. Here's what the Witch King didn't know. 478 years earlier, a hobbit named Bilbo Baggins had found a magic ring in an underground lake. And in that moment, he had shown mercy to a wretched creature named Gollum. That single act of compassion would undo everything the Witch King had built. You see, Bilbo could have killed Gollum, probably should have, by any pragmatic calculation. Gollum was dangerous, corrupted, murderous. But Bilbo felt pity, and he stayed his hand. Decades later, his nephew Frodo would show that same clemency again and again, even when others urged him to end Gollum's life. This is what Tolkien called eucatastrophe, the sudden joyous turn, the unexpected grace that arrives precisely when all seems lost. It's not something you can plan for or count on. It's the moment when Providence enters the story and reshapes defeat into victory through means no one could have foreseen. On March 25th, 3019 of the Third Age, at the cracks of doom, Frodo failed. He claimed the ring for himself. The quest had failed. But Gollum, driven by his own obsession, bit off Frodo's finger and fell into the fire with the ring. And the ring was destroyed. Sauron fell. His realm collapsed. The Nazgûl, bound to their master's fate, were swept away like shadows before dawn. In a letter, Tolkien explained it this way. Frodo had done what he could and spent himself completely, and had produced a situation in which the object of his quest could be achieved. His exercise of patience and mercy towards Gollum gained him mercy. His failure was redressed. The fortress of dark sorcery fell, not because Gandalf assaulted its gates or because Aragorn's army besieged its walls. It fell because a small person chose compassion over vengeance, again and again, creating a chain of grace that culminated in the destruction of the One Ring. The Witch King, for all his power and ancient malice, never understood that clemency could be strength. He never comprehended that the seemingly weak could harbor a resilience his sorcery couldn't penetrate. He built his power on domination and fear, never realizing that such power contains the seeds of its own destruction. And when the eucatastrophic moment arrived, all his fortresses, all his armies, all his centuries of accumulated power, they meant nothing. Minas Morgul's master was slain by Éowyn and Merry at the Pelennor fields. His fortress fell silent when the ring burned, and in both cases, the instruments of his defeat were those he had dismissed as insignificant. After the War of the Ring, King Eärnur, Aragorn returned, made his judgments about the lands his victory had reclaimed. He made Faramir Prince of Ithilien and charged him with cleansing and restoring that fair land to its former beauty. Legolas brought elves from Mirkwood to settle in Ithilien, and the chronicles tell us it became once again the fairest country in all the Westlands. But regarding Minas Morgul, Aragorn's decree was different. He commanded that the bridge be destroyed, that the poisoned meads be set aflame, and that the city itself be utterly demolished, not out of vengeance, but out of necessity. In Aragorn's own words, although it might in time come to be made clean, no man might dwell there for many long years. He counselled Faramir to make his dwelling in Emin Ardnan, far from the Morgul Vale. The valley itself would be cleansed over many centuries, but the site of the city would remain abandoned. This raises a profound question that Tolkien leaves deliberately open. Can desecration be healed? Or are some corruptions so deep that they leave permanent scars on the world? Throughout Tolkien's legendarium, we see a tension between these two possibilities. The Shire, invaded and despoiled by Saruman, is healed and becomes more beautiful than before. Ithilien, long under the shadow of Mordor, becomes a paradise. But Minas Morgul must be destroyed and left desolate for ages. What's the difference? Perhaps it's a matter of degree. The Witch King dwelt in Minas Morgul for more than 1,000 years. The Nazgûl's very presence, beings who are themselves violations of the natural order, neither dead nor alive, infected the stone and soil with an ontological corruption. It's not just that bad things happened there, it's that the place itself was transformed into something fundamentally wrong. Or perhaps Tolkien is making a point about memory and sanctity. Minas Ithil was not just any city, it was the Tower of the Moon, the Eastern Sentinel, the dwelling place of Isildur, where the White Tree first grew in Gondor. Its desecration was not merely military or political, but spiritual. Some violations cut so deep that the wound requires ages to heal, if it ever fully does. We don't know from Tolkien's writings whether Minas Morgul was ever truly cleansed, whether settlers eventually returned, whether anyone ever rebuilt on that site. The ambiguity is intentional. Some questions, Tolkien suggests, don't have easy answers. What we do know is this: the valley was gradually cleansed over many centuries. The poison dissipated, the land healed, or began to heal. Time, under Providence, can soften even the deepest scars. But Aragorn's wisdom was to acknowledge that some places need to be left alone. Not everything can be immediately restored. Not every wound is meant to be prodded and tested before its time. Some spaces require the long, slow work of natural healing, or perhaps the grace of the divine working through time. The story of Minas Morgul, in the end, is not just about how evil corrupts. It's also about limits, the limits of evil's creativity, the limits of its understanding, and ultimately, the limits of its duration. What seemed permanent and unconquerable proved temporary and fragile. What appeared as ultimate victory became the prelude to absolute defeat. The Tower of Sorcery fell. The Tower of the Moon it once was may never rise again in precisely the same form. But the valley that held them both? That, in time, could be cleansed. And perhaps that's the hope Tolkien offers us. Not that all wounds can be instantly healed, or all corruption immediately undone, but that nothing evil builds, not even by perverting what good has made, can stand forever against the long arc of providence and time. And so we see how even the most complete victory of evil contains the seeds of its own undoing. The Witch King built his power on domination and terror, never understanding that compassion could be strength. He dwelt in a stolen fortress for 1,000 years, certain of his permanence. But evil can only mock. It cannot make. And what is built on mockery cannot endure when Providence answers with grace. If this exploration of Tolkien's most haunting fortress intrigued you, please subscribe to Ranger of the Realms for more deep dives into Middle-earth's hidden corners. Let me know in the comments, do you think the site of Minas Morgul was ever truly cleansed, or do some corruptions leave permanent scars? Until next time, may vigilance never fail, and may your lights shine true.